Now joining me is Nina Ansary, author and historian, also on the Middle East Institute Advisory Board at Columbia University, on the Board of Trustees of the Iranian American Women's Foundation. Her new book is Jewels of Allah, The Untold Story of Women in Iran. It'll be out soon, and in it she explores the women's rights movement within that Muslim country. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
What's the biggest misconception about women in Iran?
Larry, the biggest misconception about women, particularly in post-revolutionary Iran, is that they are restricted and debilitated by the patriarchal laws that are currently in place.
They're not restricted by that?
Well, they are restricted, but the fascinating story is that, then the misconception is that they are restricted, but that women continue to find ways to jump over the hurdles despite the regime's gender discrimination. For example, Iran right now is distinguished by a highly educated female population, with women outnumbering men in higher education. Women are continuously finding new ways to circumvent the regime's efforts to redirect them into the private domain. Over the last year alone, the divorce rate in Iran has climbed almost 3.5%. These are ways that women in Iran are trying to maintain their autonomy and not be under the banner of patriarchy 24/7, so to speak. Women are also not getting married. These are ways women are maintaining their autonomy, and also the remarkable, courageous women in Iran who are activists and paying a high price for their activism.
As opposed to other countries in the Middle East. How are they able to do that?
Well, what women in Iran do not do is bend to the regime's patriarchal decrees, meaning that, it is an uphill battle, and they do it, first of all, there's a full-blown feminist movement in Iran.
There is?
Yes. And for the first time in Iran's history, there is what is typically, historically, constitutes as a viable feminist movement.
Are there feminist leaders well known in Iran?
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. Many. There are women from all walks of life, religious and secular women. It's a grassroots movement, and there are many women at the forefront of the women's rights movement.
Any in government?
Very few. There are very few women in government. Again, that's an uphill battle. The ones that are continuously voice that they are, hands are tied, so to speak, meaning they're basically in that position but incapable of and ineffective in that position.
How does the regime let them participate in the educational system?
Iran doesn't ban women from getting an education. Women are free to get an education in Iran. But what's remarkable is, for example, women in Iran are banned from becoming judges because, the religious laws think that women are incapable of serving as judges. So one of the, over the years, thanks to women's rights activism, women have taken this one step further and now are allowed to serve as what's called investigative judges. So it's kind of a small step forward, meaning, it's just an uphill battle, like I said, but the regime debilitates women through the patriarchal laws.
Don't they fear, though, by giving women the rights to open education, education will lead the way to equality, won't it?
Well,
if you're a well-educated society is going
well, that's exactly what's happening, which is, this explains why initially when Khomeini came to power in 1979 and through the Cultural Revolution Islamicized the nation, the whole premise was to educate a new generation of women who subscribe to the religious ideology, and in order for these women as mothers to serve as role models for future generation. Now, what's transpired is not what was envisioned, which is women have, particularly that traditional segment that was in seclusion prior to Khomeini. There were what I call in my book Khomeini's blunders, which are fortuitous where women are concerned. One is, when Khomeini came to power, the traditional women were behind him initially. They were opposed to the Shah because of the Shah's overnight Western secular transformation. So when Khomeini initially came to power, he empowered that traditional woman who did not relate to the overnight changes the Shah had undertaken, namely the unveiling. So the traditional woman came out of her lair and basically got an education and, as you say, was empowered. Another empowering medium was the reversion of co-ed schools to single-sex schools, which among Western nations recently has proven to be an empowering medium for girls.
Jewels of Allah, the book is all about this.
Jewels of Allah explores several components, has several components to it. One is exploring the concealed, what I call the concealed components, leading to a feminist movement in post-revolutionary Iran. And the other is exploring the failed gender ideology of the Islamic Republic, which in essence was initially focused on redirecting women into the private domain. What has actually transpired has been the opposite. In fact, the book explores what ingredients have empowered the very constituency they were meant to restrain.
The book is out in June.
Yes.
Since they're not in government, I guess you would only know this through polls of any kind. But
Yes.
what do Iranian women, if there is a solid position, feel about the nuclear talks?
Well, what I know categorically is that this, not only women in Iran, but the citizens of Iran want a deal to happen. They want a deal to happen because Iran right now is losing over 150,000 educated people annually who leave Iran because of the economic situation. So I know that the citizens of Iran want a deal to happen.
And they're also, in the main, isn't Iran, the people of Iran, among the most friendliest toward the United States in the whole region?
Yes, that, Larry, is very important, and it's just recently being brought to the forefront that the citizens of Iran are not defined by this regime, meaning they are entirely separate from this regime. People in Iran have a very, very favorable view of the West. They are fascinated by the West. They embrace the West, and everything that is being forbidden by hardliners in the Islamic Republic is being carried out underground by Iranian citizens.
Underground?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Have you experienced any racism problems in America?
I did initially when I came to America in 1979, but that's understandable. It was the
Hostages.
Islamic Revolution, and it coincided with the U.S. hostage crisis. So this was New York City circa 1979, and the Iranian immigrant community was not established then. So I experienced somewhat initially, but it was very short-lived.
Have you gone back to your country?
No, I have not.
Would you not be welcome?
I may have some problems going back to Iran, not sure. My father was in the Shah's cabinet, so I'm sort of hesitant to go back to Iran for that very reason.
President Obama has been criticized by many for not using the words Islamic extremism as opposed to violent extremism. Where do you stand on that?
In terms of using that kind of, well, you know, I think any kind of extremism, ideologically speaking, is wrong. I think when you become extremist on any level, you lose all rational sense of logic. And it's difficult to carry a dialogue when someone is that extreme on any level. I'm not just speaking Islam, I'm talking any extremism is wrong, in my opinion.
So the term Islamic extremism doesn't fit the bill?
Yes, it does. In terms of this regime, you know, you have to realize, again, in Iran, the current regime is extreme and hardline and extremely conservative again. So I don't know if I would define them under the banner of Islamic extremism. I would define them, I tend to refer to this regime as the hardliners because, again, as you know, in the Islamic Republic, you have progressive factions as well, reformists. So this current leadership is hardline.
The American political leadership, Republicans and many Democrats, don't trust the government at all, don't trust any deal. Would you trust them?
Okay, this is something that I like to separate. I am on the side of the Iranian citizens. So I want what's best for the Iranian citizens.
Which is peace.
Which is peace, which is peaceful resolution and economic relief, because people in Iran are currently suffering because of the sanctions. My concern from a humanitarian perspective is not to align myself with what's best for the regime, but what's best for the Iranian citizens.
Is Ahmadinejad still in any power there?
Last news from Ahmadinejad was that he has procured a license to open a university. And
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I used to interview him, so.
Oh, you did?
Oh, 3 times, yeah. Interesting fellow,
Yes.
to say the least.
Well, interesting in quotes, right?
Do you expect to see, finally, advances for women?
I'm hopeful, and I'm only hopeful based on the fact that women have been relentless in their pursuit for emancipation. So I definitely am very hopeful that they will. It's an uphill battle. I mean, even in progressive nations, it's still an uphill battle. So, but I'm very hopeful for the women of Iran.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Larry.